Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting edition of Seekers of the Supernatural. I'm your moderator, Tony Spera, along with hosts. Her story tonight, and along with Joe, will document and talk and investigate and go through what it's like to live in a haunted house. She has endured living in a haunted house for over 10 years. Along with Dr. Klemick, they will explain some of the documentation that they've gathered through photographs, through recordings that they've had, through video. And also, the experts, Ed and Lorraine Warren, will talk about why the phenomena happens, what you can do about it, and tip you off in case you live in a haunted house. So what I'd like to do tonight is start off with Ed and Lorraine, ask them about the house in Farmington, then we'll go on to our guests, Jennifer and Joe. And we also have another guest who's distinguished also, and we'd like to show her to you, if we could. Her name is Gizmo.
Her name is Gizmo Warren.
She is Ed and Lorraine Warren's dog, and she will be on another program documenting about animals who survive death after their physical body. So we'd like to start off with Lorraine and Ed, if we could, about the house in Farmington.
Well, Jennifer and Dr. Klemick became involved with us in our work about a year and a half ago. We did not know at the time any more than the fact that they were very interested in our subject matter. We have found that a great deal of people in the medical field, Tony, as you know, are interested in our work, and I think a lot of it comes from the fact that they deal with life or death situations every day. We didn't know that it was a very personal thing, though, where Jennifer was concerned. We didn't know that she lived in a haunted home, a very old home in Farmington with her beautiful family. And we didn't know also the amount of psychic evidence that she had. As a result of finding this out, we have spent time at her home. We've had students with the New England Society go to the house, and I'll tell you, it is going to be one fascinating program this evening.
I think one of the interesting things, Tony, is the fact that Jennifer has 10 children. Believe it or not, beautiful lady has 10 children. And we have found that where you have many children, whether it be in a daycare center or in a home, in a church, that spirits are drawn to those children. And taking psychic pictures, we get the electromagnetic energy and the light rods, the psychic light rods. We have phenomena occurring in the bedrooms at night. They are a draw, but Jennifer and Joe will tell you more about the house. That is very interesting.
Okay, I'd like to start with Jennifer, if I could. Jennifer, you are a student of the New England Society for Psychic Research, as well as Dr. Klemick is.
And also editor and co-editor.
And I've been just getting to that. To the Journal of the New England Society for Psychic Research, which is published bi-monthly. And you're on the internet, I understand, too. And if you want, Joe, you can always fill us in on your website address. But Jennifer, I'd like to start out with you on how you began this kind of work with the Society and about your house, your haunted house.
Well, I'd like to begin with my house because the house led me to Ed and Lorraine. Approximately 10 years ago, my husband Tom and I bought a 26-room colonial revival home in Farmington. It was a lovely home, and we at that point had 5 children, and we were planning on having more. So we thought we would need a big house. We moved in, and the very first night that we were in that home, something bizarre happened. Now, I had always heard about ghosts and never really thought too much about it, never lived in a haunted house before. So the first several things that happened to us, we discounted. The very first night we were in that house, our daughter, my 5th child, was then 7 years old. And we had put her in a room about 4 doors down from where we were sleeping. She came into my room at 4 in the morning and she shook me awake and she said, "Mommy." And I said, "Abby, what are you doing awake?" And she said, "Why did you slap me?" And I said, "Honey, I haven't left the bed and I would never hit you." She said, "Mommy, I was asleep in my bed and this lady with a long white nightgown slapped me on the face and I opened my eyes and I looked at her and then she disappeared and I thought it was you." And then she looked down and she said, "You're not even wearing a white nightgown." And I said, "Honey, it wasn't me, it was a bad dream." Ha, it was not a bad dream. Approximately 2 weeks later, I was making a pot of coffee. I made the pot of coffee. It had just finished perking, and I heard the phone. I left the kitchen for approximately 4 minutes. I was alone in the house. I came back. The coffee had totally disappeared. There was only, but I knew that I had made the coffee because there was a brown ring in the bottom of the pot. I started hearing doors slamming shut and opening and closing. I'd be alone in the house. We started smelling very bad smells in one part of the house, always outside this one closet in a back hallway, and we all investigated. We thought, my husband thought maybe something had died behind the floorboards, but it would come and go very quickly. It would be very strong and very foul, and then it would go within a matter of maybe 30 or 40 seconds. Then we spent our first Christmas in Farmington. I had sequestered all the Christmas presents for the children and for the family off in a sleeping porch on the second floor. I had locked the door, and I told all the children they were not allowed in there. Christmas Eve, my family, we all went to Mass. I had maybe 25 presents that I was going to bring to my parents and my sisters and brothers. And I had left all the presents in this room and had locked the door. We went to Mass. We came back to the house, and my husband and the children stayed in the car, and I said, I'm just going to run up and get the Christmas presents. I ran up the stairs, and I unlocked the door, and I walked in, and they were all gone. Every single Christmas present was gone. Now, we were being expected for Christmas Eve dinner, and I was in a panic. What happened to the presents? And I knew nobody could have taken them because they were there when I left. So I was flying through the house, and there's 26 rooms now, so there's a lot of running, and I'm running there and looking, and they were... I found them in a pyramid shape underneath a glass coffee table in the living room.
Wow.
And I just looked at them, and I thought, I didn't even have time to comprehend it. I just kind of scooped them all up, and I ran out the house. But I never forgot that. And of course, I asked the children, and of course, they hadn't touched them.
That's amazing.
Ed, well, what she's talking about here, of course, are apports. Something that dematerializes at one point and materializes at another. Everything that Jennifer has said here would be the beginning stages of what we call infestation. The doors opening and closing, the ghost lights, the sounds all through the house. The children are a natural draw. But the thing that really interests me is the fact that one of the children on the first night was slapped. That tells us that this spirit does not like children.
Yeah. Now the other...
Did anything else happen like that, Jennifer?
But the thing is also what I'm kind of connecting the gifts with, Jennifer, is the fact of the disappearance of animals in your home.
Yes, I know. Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I had 2 cats, beloved cats, Cupcake and Pounce, and we'd had them for about 5 years. They were beloved pets. The week we moved into Farmington, both cats ran away. Now, they had never run away before, and my husband was trying to console me, and he said, Jennifer, they probably were trying to go back to our old home.
Right.
One of the cats came back after 3 days. He would never live in our home again. He actually went to our next-door neighbor, and they took him in. And he would come to the house, and he would come to the back door, but he's never come back in the house again. The second cat left for 6 or 7 months and appeared one day and stayed for 2 days and then left again.
Wow.
So both cats left. Then we had some difficulty. Well, the next thing that happened with animals is we had I went down to fix breakfast for the children one morning about 4 or 5 years ago. This is still before now I've involved myself with Ed and Lorraine. I'm becoming worried about the house, but I'm trying not to tell too many people and just trying to deal with it the best I can. I went down and I was making cereal for the children, and I went into the pantry, and on its back was this, it was bigger than it was like I don't know, it wasn't a hamster, but it was a chipmunk. On its back with its head gone, just its head gone, and its body was intact. And I thought, now, first of all, how did it get there? It was lying in full view of me, and where was the head? It looked like it had been cleanly cut off. And I thought that was strange. If an animal had, at that point we did have another cat, but he never did bring things in. But even if he had, he wouldn't have just eaten the head.
It wouldn't have been such a clean cut.
I can't imagine.
No.
It was very clean.
Now, your husband is a surgeon.
My husband is a surgeon.
Practicing that day.
I don't think so.
He was trying to get ahead, I guess.
Yeah.
But, now, Dr. Klimek, Do you have anything to add about this story?
My first encounter really was about 2 years ago when I had back surgery, and I became their 10th child. Jennifer fails to mention that between moving in and recently, they've adopted another 5 children, so there's a lot of children in this house. And then I became the 10th one because I was recovering from back surgery. They took me in, put me in the guest room, and I spent about 2 months there basically lying on their floor or lying on the bed. And I never heard many of these stories, but I would be lying there in bed where I spent a lot of my time reading, and especially late at night, I would hear footsteps in the hallway, and I would ask, is anybody there, because I couldn't really climb out of bed, and no one ever answered.
You would hear footsteps in the hallway, but there's nobody there.
Right.
Okay.
I would wake up and hear the door rattling, the doorknob rattling, and again, I'd ask, is anyone there? No one was ever there.
Would you see the doorknob rattling?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And then there was 1 or 2 nights, and it was in the wee hours, 3 o'clock in the morning sometime, I would wake up and I just sensed that there was something or someone in the room, and felt as though there was somebody sitting down at the end of my bed. That was a new experience for me. Then, and this was around the holidays when your brother visited, and I was telling this story, and he sort of leaped up at the table and said, "Oh my God, that's the room where I felt something too." And I don't remember the details, but several other people have been in that room and have felt a presence, have had the bedclothes sink down as though somebody sits on the end of the bed. And at the time, I called it the creeps. You just get this. You get this strange feeling. The hair on the back of your neck goes up. I get goosebumps. I feel a little weird, and sometimes even feel a little cold, and then it would pass. And it was always between midnight and 3 o'clock.
Did you ever
in the
see
morning.
anything like a ghost, Joe?
I never. No, not.
Any electromagnetic energy?
No,
I know you brought a lot of pictures with you tonight, showing electromagnetic energy and ghost globules.
Maybe we should take a look at that.
Fantastic film.
But this was before we met you and Lorraine. We didn't know what to look for.
No.
I think it was when the children started telling me they were seeing things that I really got frightened. We have a daughter, Emily, who's just an adorable little child. She's very bright, very articulate. She told me one night a little girl walked in her room and talked to her, and then she followed her out and she saw her float down the stairs. She said, "Mommy, can you do that? Can you go down the stairs without having your feet touch?" And I thought, oh my word, I think maybe we need some help here. So we had heard about Ed and Lorraine, and I said to Joe, what do you say? We'll go and listen to them. And, we went and we listened, and we were very impressed. You were very honest and very believable. And I said to Joe, I really need to start going to class. I need to know if indeed I do live in a haunted house and what we need to do about it.
Jennifer, what do you know about the background in your home?
Of the house itself.
Well, the house is 100 years old. Actually, it's 2 homes. The back part of the house is a barn. And it was added as an extension around 1902, but the original house was built in 1888 by a man named Noah Wallace, and he was a very prominent businessman in Farmington. The grammar school is named after him. I don't know that he ever lived in the house himself, but he did build this lovely, fine home, and there really have only been about 6 or 7 families in it. We've tried to trace some of the history, but we haven't been able to find the kinds of things I'd like to know, like were there any tragedies associated with the families? No, we haven't been able to find any of that yet. I'm hoping that maybe someone will come forward.
And you don't really feel, I know there's been things that have happened, like the child being hit. That does bother us. And also about the animals. But there's not a real ominous feeling in your home. But,
no.
But then there's so much love that would conquer anything bad that was in there, because of all the children and the family, and it's such a beautiful way of family life.
Well, thank you.
Oh, it is.
It's definitely a very active house.
Oh,
yes,
psychically.
active.
Oh, it is an active home, all right. It is
It's
an
not just the
active
children.
home. That's for
I
sure.
wonder if we should take a look at some of these photos that were brought by Dr. Klemick and Jennifer. Let's want to start out with the outside picture of the house, I guess. Let's
go
just
ahead.
take a look at. We're going to have Chris on camera 1 to
Now, what you're going to see
focus in
here
on this if she could.
will be what we refer to as
Have to
ghost
zoom in.
globules, which are floating around the outside of the house. These are actual spirits.
Right where my
See
finger
one
is.
right there down by
That was one of the
Tony's
first pictures
finger.
we got of the
Yes,
house,
that's
right
right.
after we had started
And
class.
what is the picture
That's
here?
Christmas morning, and you can see to the right there is
There's
a light
Light
rod
rod.
coming, which
Right.
was not apparent, obviously, or the two people sitting there would not be sitting there.
And not long
And
after
then-
that, by the way, there
That's
was an
on an angle,
episode
Tony.
where the toys started playing spontaneously in the middle of the night. So the ice cream truck would go on
all the
that Christmas
signs of
day.
infestation.
They were all
Oh,
right.
my God.
Okay, now we have some inside snapshots.
Now, that's
So
in
you
the
guys want to
dining.
explain this one?
That's
Joe
in the
explained it. Joe took
yes,
that one.
That's,
That was
yes.
taken in the dining room on the occasion of a birthday party. So a lot of people there were having a good time, a lot of energy, and at one point Jennifer said, "Something's over there," and I just swung around and took an automatic flash photograph
Oh, that's
in that
beautiful.
direction.
Now, you couldn't see that, could you?
No, I didn't see anything at all, and I didn't feel anything. But I was standing about 5 feet away from where that corner of the room is. Now, we've had that photograph analyzed by a number of people who say that it is not a light leak, that it looks like it is the leading edge of something, maybe one of those round globules that we saw in the earlier photograph
yes.
that's moving.
Yes.
Right.
And we took that photograph and measured the distance that rod covered in the 250th of a second of the shutter speed of the camera, and multiply it out and figure out that it covers about 5 feet, and therefore it's moving, whatever it is, if it's moving, is moving at about 850 miles an hour, which is probably why we can't
About
see
how
these
fast I moved to the refrigerator. But
It's a
I'd like
different
to.
vibrational field. than
That's
ours.
one of the children, and it was a similar thing. I was standing outside of the door. We walked in. Jennifer said,
Emily spotted that.
That's right.
She calls them the white guys and the black guys, and she said, "Oh, there's a white guy right there," and she pointed. You can see she's just moving her hand back to her mouth from pointing, and Joe happened to have his camera up and just snapped a picture, and we were able to.
That is a fantastic
Boy,
shot.
that's a beautiful.
Well, especially since it was
picture.
validated. She actually saw that and pointed to it.
I think
This
I know
is
you got
the-
another picture, but I know you want to show a video too of.
Yes.
Yeah,
Joe,
let's do that next.
you want to explain what that video's about?
the video was taken at Jennifer's house when a whole team of investigators were there for the whole night. There were 13 of us, interesting number, that came to spend the evening. All brought cameras, and we split up into teams of 2 and 3 people, stationed ourselves around the house, and during the night took photographs, listened for noises, took audio taping, and also set up video cameras in various rooms and just turned them on and let them run all night.
Let him go. Yeah.
And by the way, this was the day after Halloween last year. Something happened actually on the day of Halloween, just before this.
What was that, John?
Something very unsettling happened. One of the children had a beloved pet hamster, and the hamster disappeared in the cage on Halloween night after we had all gone to bed. There was a book on top of this hamster cage. There's no way the hamster could have gotten out, but the hamster did get out, and I found the hamster the next morning. Well, you can describe the condition. It was.
How bad?
She called me and
Oh.
left it right where it was. It was in the corner of a room, and it basically it was mutilated. Its throat was cut, but nothing was eaten. I mean, it wasn't something that an animal would do. It was as though someone took a knife and just ran it across the throat, and the head was sort of hanging on.
Gee, was O.J. still in jail at that time? But
This was very disconcerting because we knew that night a whole group of people were coming to the house.
We felt it
for
was a warning to us not to have the psychic investigators come to the house. That it was a warning. You know, this is what we're going to do to your hamster.
Sure.
You know, your.
Sure.
So that night
His
we
name wasn't O.J.
we just said that.
I forget the hamster's name.
we had 8 hours of videotape after the night. During the night, there were noises heard. There were a few of those photographs that you saw we got that night. But one of the cameras that was in the dining room, where people came and went all night, was on, and we basically had 6 hours worth of tape. And going through this tape, the next several days, it takes time to go through these. There is a sequence that we're going to see here where 3 investigators, myself and 2 other investigators, walk through the room. One of them tarries behind us a little bit, looks around a little bit, and then disappears.
What disappears, Joe?
The person
The
does.
person disappears. Then, does it reappear? The person reappears?
No, right after he disappears, briefly, there's a shining globe of light right near where he was that glows brightly, just like those globules on the earlier films, the photos, and then recedes away.
Oh, boy. I'd love to see that tape.
Maybe we can see it, and we'll talk a little bit about what's happening.
We'll have Rob cue it up and get ready to show it. And Joe, maybe you could voice over on what's going on
Yeah, we're
when
in the
it
dining
starts.
room, and it's dark, and the only light in the room are candles, so we're not going to see. It's not going to be very clear.
Okay, here
Those
it
two
starts.
things. You can see the table and the chairs, and the candles sitting there, and there's a window to the outside right about 2 o'clock. And soon, that's me walking towards the camera. I look at the camera, put my hand in front of it, which I usually do when I'm walking by.
Yep.
That's the other investigator. I look at the fellow to the far side. He's looking up at the ceiling. He looks it up, and he's gone.
See how
Disappeared.
he just disappeared right from the frame.
Now you're slowing it
Now,
down?
this is the same thing, slow motion, and you keep your eye on it. That's me coming toward the camera again, and there's an investigator right behind me named Mike, and that's David, and he's walking across, and you'll note the candle flames. Keep your eye on those.
On the candle flame.
Because you'll see that they do flicker. Well, they flicker on fast speed, and you can almost tell from one frame to the next when the lights are flickering. So there's David. He's now he's looking down at the floor. Here comes Mike walking toward the camera. Meanwhile, I've now left the room. I'm now in the hallway heading for the kitchen. Mike is coming toward the camera, and he's going to join me in the hallway, and we're walking out into the kitchen
Now
to
what-
greet the rest of
Okay.
the
It appears that David's
investigators.
looking up at something.
Now, David's looking up. As Mike goes by, he will cross the camera and then enter the hallway. David's putting his hand on his head now. He's still looking up at the ceiling. And again, on faster speed, the candle flames are flickering. He's looking up.
Yes.
He brings his head down, and then he stares directly at the camera.
Yeah.
And then,
And then is this where he
this
disappears?
is half speed, and then he basically goes away. And then shortly after that, if you watch just a little bit to the
See
right,
the
see a little
glow?
light.
See the
There's a
glow?
little
Yes.
light that comes out
Oh, yeah.
and
See
the
goes
glow?
away.
That is wild.
The next sequence
That
is
is-
that was one frame a
amazing.
second. This is even slower motion, and what we try to do here is actually catch the moment when he disappears in a single frame, so that you can look at the candles, so that you can see whether or not. I mean, the other explanation here is somebody turned the camera off, but obviously we had just walked by and we're out of the room.
But also, didn't you say that the flicker of the flame seems to be in
They're in
cadence with
sync. They're in sync.
Yeah.
Okay, now David again. He's looking up.
He's now alone in the room.
Right, we're
No one
out.
else in that part of the house.
And he disappears right about there. Let's see.
Now we're slowing it down so we can get on a single frame.
He's just. He looks like he's kind of well.
He's looking now towards the camera, and then
He dematerializes, I guess, right here.
You'll see
Huh?
there.
Boy, that was
that's
something.
one frame,
Oh,
and then a
that's
few frames later, about
incredible.
6 or 7 frames later, you can see
That
just a
glow.
little bit to the right of where he was, the beginning of
That glow.
of a globe that shines brightly for a moment and then goes away. Now beyond those are French doors that basically open into a dark hallway, and there's that light.
Oh, there it is.
There, I
There's
see
no
the light.
flashlight out there, no candles, nothing. The rest of the house is very dark.
We're in the kitchen and everyone else is upstairs. And in asking David if he doesn't remember anything, the next time David was actually seen, or we knew where this is now back to normal speed, just one more time. I
Normal
think.
speed, and he just dematerializes.
Walking out.
Now there's,
Was that you, Joe, with the hand
Yeah.
in front of the
Yes.
camera? Okay.
There he-
Light.
And he's gone. And that's it.
That's an amazing piece
that
of film.
is
That's wild.
amazing.
Well, all
That
the
is
films that I've
just
seen
amazing.
over 50 years, I've never seen that.
No.
Many things have happened in that room.
Yes, this room, at 11 o'clock in the morning, about 6 months ago, I was with another woman, so I felt very good. I was validated. We saw a little girl with her back to us, standing in the doorway, and she looked once over her shoulder at me. At first I thought it was my 4-year-old child, because from the back she looked very similar. Looked over her shoulder at me, and then I knew right away it wasn't. My daughter, Rebecca, turned around and walked into my husband's office, which is a blind office. We immediately followed. We were one room away. We were right at those French doors. We immediately followed into the dining room, went into the room, By then I knew in my heart it wasn't. It was a ghost. It was not a child.
Wow.
And we looked around, and
That
We're
is
running a little bit
phenomenal.
short on time, so I'd like to show this picture right here.
That is-
And Joe, really quick, what is this?
This is taken on Christmas Day. That's one of Jennifer's daughters. There's actually another one sitting on the floor, and that thing goes up, turns around, slows down, just like blood does in a capillary, and then speeds up again. But the average speed of whatever that thing is about 2,000 miles an hour.
2,000 by your
That's a good
calculations.
example of what you were talking about,
That
Joe,
is
where the ghost
amazing.
globule turns into the psychic light
It's
round.
Exactly.
You see all the
Exactly.
different layers as you look
Yeah.
at that. Look at the amount of layers.
Okay,
in that-
Joe,
that
you
is
want to tell us your website on the internet?
www.here.com.ghost. www.
With a slash.
With a
at the end.
slash. Here come ghost.
And that'll be the New England Society for Psychic
Society,
Research.
and it's sitting there waiting
webpage.
for you to visit anytime.
Okay, and if people have questions or comments on the show, or want to come on the show, or want to write you,
Right, to, and thank you so much for your beautiful letters to Ed and Lorraine Warren, Post Office Box 41, Monroe, Connecticut, 06468.
If they've had a ghostly experience, we'd be
love
happy
to talk to them.
to have them here on our program.
Excellent. For Dr. Klemick, for Jennifer Banover, Ed Warren, you look a lot like Ed McMahon, Lorraine Warren, I'm Tony Spera. Thank you. Good night.